All right, guys. So, over the past week or so, I've been cleaning out my office in preparation for hopefully moving house later this year. And one of the things that I came across was all of my old accounts for my very first business. So, for the past few days, I've been shredding all of those documents, as apparently you only need to keep company records going back 6 years. So, I'm keeping everything from 2016 and I'm shredding everything from 2016 backwards. So, I think there's like 8 years of records to shred. So that's a lot of shredding to do. But doing so actually made me feel quite nostalgic and made me think about the time when I actually quit my job to start my very first proper business. Now, I'd had some smaller businesses before that when I was at school and at uni and stuff, but this was my first proper limited company. So I just want to talk through why I decided to quit my job, as I know that many of the people, if not probably the majority of the people that watch this channel, are probably currently employed and hopefully one day will be in a position to quit their job. So I want to talk you through my backstory, just fill you in on where I came from, and then you guys can take from that what you want. So let me take you back to 2008, so 14 years ago. That was when I started my first limited company with a business partner, which I'll come back to later in this video. Now, at the time, I had been out of university since 2006, so just coming up 2 years, I'd been in proper employment. Now, before that, I'd spent 15 years in education. So you got 6 years in primary school, 5 years in secondary school, 2 years in sixth form, and then 3 years at university. And I'd spent 3 years doing a degree on internet technologies, which sounded quite out there at the time, but really they didn't teach us anything new. It was a syllabus, without sounding ageist, it was a syllabus delivered by old people who didn't really understand internet technologies in the first place. So I didn't really get much value from being at university, other than the social aspect and the communication skills that you develop in those environments. So when I left university, I went to work for a web design company. Now, I had been building websites on and off since I was about 11 or 12 years old, so I did have a few years' experience doing that. And the position I applied for was a CSS developer. I think I was paid about £16,000 per year as my first job straight out of university, which wasn't too bad at the time. And there were 2 people above me in the department, so there's 3 CSS developers in total in that department. Now, about I think 3 or 4 months into that job, the lead developer in the CSS team got sacked. So they had been doing their own business on the side, which was fine, and the company were okay with that. But then they found on his work PC he'd actually been doing some of his business-related activities during work time. So they gave him the boot. So all of a sudden, it was a 2-man team, and I was still a junior CSS developer at the time. And the other person that was there naturally took charge of the team. And that's how we progressed for a bit. And I was learning my trade as a CSS developer. And I think about 6 months after that, that guy found a new job and decided to leave. So all of a sudden, it was a 1-man team. They put me in charge of CSS, even though at the time I had less than a year commercial experience in it. And my coding at that point wasn't that great. It's much better now, but at that time it wasn't that great. And I remember we employed an apprentice to come and work under me. The first one didn't work out, but the second one did. So we had a 2-man CSS team, and that's how it stayed. I was the head CSS developer, and I think I got a pay rise. I think I was on about 25 grand after the first 12 months. So for someone that was 22 years old and had been out of university 1 year, I was on 25k without working in London. I work in the southeast. So I was in quite a good position. So why did I then suddenly decide to quit my job? Because that's when I quit my job in 2008. Well, when I was at university, I spent most of the time with one friend in particular. We did the same course and we did all of the same classes, and we got on very, very well. And what happened is, I think the Christmas of 2007, I hadn't been well for a couple of weeks. I had a really bad bug at that time. And I think my wife had popped to their house to drop off some presents and a Christmas card. And he was in a similar position to me. He'd left uni and gone to work for a web design company as well, a different web design company. And he said to my other half at the time, who was now my wife, of course, that he would consider going into business with me if I ever decided to. So when my wife told me that, I thought about it, And then a few days later, I sent him a text and said, "Do you want to do this then?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." So that's what we did. It was a very quick decision. But before I got to that point, there was a lot of stuff that had gone on to put me in a position where I actually wanted to start my own business. So if I just talk you through that. So obviously I was doing well in the company I was at. I was earning okay. But it went back to my core driver of being employed and what we've been led to believe was the correct way of being. So my goal at that point was to just earn as much money as possible. I'd just come through an education system which had taught me that success was money and having a good job. Also had parents which believed the same thing, that always wanted me to do well, to get a good job and to earn as much money as possible. So my goal was always to just make as much money as I can, because surely that's going to lead to happiness, right? But I think what happened is, having been employed for a couple of years, I was at the highest I could go within that department. And then above me, it was a family-run business and all of the directors were family members. And no one else before I'd been there or during my time there had been able to get above head of department. So it was a case of accepting that was the highest I was going to go within the company, within that team, or making another decision. The other thing I noticed as well is I worked with a number of people similar to my age at the time, kind of in their early 20s, and they all seemed quite happy. But most of the older employees there that were kind of in their mid-30s or older never really seemed to be very happy. So, if that's what employment does to you over 5, 10, 15 years, I didn't want to be part of that. Of course, correlation does not equal causation, and they might not have been happy for other reasons, but that was a very simple takeaway from just seeing the older people that were employees at the time. So when the opportunity presented itself to actually start my own business with a business partner, the pound signs, I guess, flashed in front of my eyes, thinking, look, we can make a lot more money. We can get rich. We can be super happy doing this. And I guess ultimately that's what it boils down to. That was why I quit my job in the end, was this desire to want to make a lot of money. Now, obviously, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you'll know that is not what I'm about, and that's changed and as I've evolved throughout my career. But I wanted to give you guys that background. And from there, I went on to start my own business, and there's lots of story that go around that first business that led me to leaving that business partner after 4 years. And I might cover that in a next video or in a future video. So if you want to hear about that, let me know in the comments, and of course, subscribe to the channel. But I just wanted to fill you guys in. That was why I quit my job. It was in pursuit of making as much money as possible. Now, I do not recommend that should be the reason that you start your own business, is in pursuit of as much money. Well, if that's what drives you, absolutely make that decision. But I think there is more to it than that, and I've covered that in other videos. And if you want to hear about how I've evolved from that mindset of just being driven purely by money to where I am now, make sure you subscribe to the channel, as I'm always releasing videos like this, trying to give you a bit of background about where I came from and how my mind works and how I've got to the way I prefer to live and work at the moment. So hopefully you guys have found that enlightening, hearing a bit of my backstory. If you did, hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.